ornithologist with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. So in late May, the Indiana DNR received reports of sick and dead songbirds in Monroe County with symptoms of eye discharge, crustiness and swelling, neurological problems, for example, tremors, disorientation, and uncontrollable limbs, and behaviors that indicate swelling of the head. For example, they would kind of have their heads look as if they weighed too much. These symptoms are primarily being seen in blue jays, American robins, common grackles, European starlings, and northern cardinals, but other species may be affected. And the cause is currently unknown in songbirds from several states such as Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. are showing similar symptoms. When we learned about this, we ended up sending 12 bird samples from a wildlife rehabilitator in Monroe County and submitting it to the Indiana Animal Disease Diagnostics Laboratory for diagnostic testing. We are also coordinating with the USGS National Wildlife Health Center on sick or dead bird reports and diagnostic findings. So far, birds have tested negative for West Nile virus and avian influenza. However, no definitive causes of illness or death has been determined at this time. To date, 53 counties are being affected. These counties can be found with updated information on our songbird deaths landing page on the DNR website. And because the cause of the disease remains unknown, we recommend that residents across the state stop feeding birds until the mortality event has concluded, including hummingbird feeding and broadcast feeding. We do not anticipate that removing feeders will impact populations of wild birds. There are abundant food resources available to birds at this time of the year, including insects, berries, nectar, and seeds. And birds will shift to those available food sources when feeding is stopped. The ceasing of feeding will then prevent birds from congregating and potentially spreading the disease to others. We also recommend that people clean feeders and baths with a 10% bleach solution, then rinse with water and allow to air dry. When dry, store feeders and baths inside until further notice. Avoid handling birds. If you need to handle those birds, wear disposable gloves. And when removing dead birds, wear disposable gloves and place birds and gloves in a sealable plastic bag to dispose with household trash. Also, keep pets away from sick or dead birds, just as a standard precaution. And please report sick or dead wildlife that are exhibiting these symptoms to the online reporting tool to alert DNR staff. Then additional information will be shared as we continue to monitor the situation and when test results are received. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm free to receive and answer them.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat at this moment. I apologize.
So I'm seeing a question from Zach Horner. And the question is, what inclinations do you have as to what may be killing these birds? So far, we are looking at every possible angle of this disease. And again, we ruled out West Nile virus and avian influenza, but we have made no direct connections between anything quite yet because we're waiting on test results. And those tests take some time. We are hoping to get some more updates regarding whether we can rule more things out. However, we are coordinating with the National Wildlife Health Center and our labs to be able to determine what those things are. And then I see, JB, should I have you?
Go to Mike at WBEZ. I apologize. We're having a technical difficulty on my end and unmuting, getting folks to unmute. So I apologize for that. If you go to Mike's question, Allison,
sure.
We should be on track after that.
So, Mike Puente, is that it? So the question is, are these songbird deaths happening in Northwest Indiana as well? And that is correct. We have songbird deaths occurring in the Lake County, Porter County, LaPorte County, as well as, I think it's, let's see, St. Joe County, and then surrounding, if you go further south, there are also other areas, other counties that have been affected. And I'll go to Adam Pinsker. He says, I have a question. I'm with WFIU Bloomington. How long will it take for the lab to discover the source of the bird deaths? That is a great question. It is going to take some time because I like to compare it to trying to find an unknown object in a haystack. I want to say needle in a haystack, but we don't even know what that needle looks like. So we are trying our best to figure out exactly where, what exactly are causing these symptoms and trying to rule things out as we continue to do tests. But again, those tests take a long time. And really, I think the best way of just dealing with it is just trying to prevent transmission. Hence why we recommended the statewide advisory or recommendation to remove bird feeders and cease feeding altogether, as well as removing bird baths.
There's one more. He was able to unmute me. I know we had all those cicadas. Do birds eat them, and could that be a factor too?
Yeah, great question. So birds do eat cicadas. They definitely love to eat them when they are abundant. However, we haven't had any direct link between the cicadas and the cause so far. I know that there are some ideas out there that have been perhaps pointing that they might be the cause, but there is no direct link. Our labs have not determined that as a cause. So regarding the report from Smithsonian, there is no connection. Again, there is no connection. Do you have any other questions?
Laura Gerber?
Oh, sure.
You should be able to unmute your microphone.
Yeah, that was a similar question to mine, but another question is, how is the DNR tracking the illness in addition to residents self-reporting?
Yeah, great question. So we are relying primarily on residents to report through our online health reporting tool, but we are also starting to try to get to coordinate with the wildlife rehabilitators who are seeing quite an influx of birds with these symptoms. So they're the ones who initially were able to alert us to this new disease. So they've been a really great resource to us, and we're encouraging them when they do get sick birds in that exhibit these symptoms to use that online reporting tool to let us know about it too.
All right, we'll go to Wes Mills.
Hi, yeah, Wes from Inside Indiana Business. Any concerns about commercial poultry flocks?
Great question. So we have been telling people who are worried about this to specifically contact the Board of Animal Health, because they are the ones that regulate commercial poultry. So far, we haven't had any connections between poultry and the songbird disease, but if there is poultry that are exhibiting these symptoms, please consult the Board of Animal Health.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, we have a question from, it just says esains at iu.edu. So you should be free to unmute.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just have any causes of the illness been ruled out, and is there anything else people can do to potentially prevent the spread of the illness?
Absolutely. So the two specific diseases that have been ruled out are avian influenza and West Nile virus. And because, again, we don't know enough about, because there are myriad other things that could possibly be causing this disease, we are taking as more of a proactive approach and being very cautious by recommending people to cease feeding birds altogether, meaning not just I'd say birds that eat seed, but also birds that eat nectar, so hummingbirds. Also, we recommend not putting out any food for them, even bread, through broadcast feeding. And then we recommend that people do not have their bird baths out as well. And the whole reason for this is because we want birds to be able to socially distance naturally. They don't have that, when there are feeders, they're immediately attracted to them. They don't have that, I guess, know-how that that's not okay for them when there is a disease going around. So we need to better impose that on them so that they can naturally socially distance and feed on other things instead of the bird seed and the nectar and whatnot.
Thank you.
All right, Alan Carter. You need to unmute.
You'd answered my other question already, but the other thing that I was thinking is this an independent investigation, or what's the cooperation like between states right now?
Yeah, this is not independent at all. This is one very large working group. We are just a big interagency group that is coordinating not only between federal and state agencies, but also nonprofits. So the Smithsonian is involved as well. We have the National Wildlife Health Center at the U.S. Geological Survey. They're the ones who are really leading the effort in coordinating all the states and other agencies and nonprofits to better understand what's going on. So other involvements would come from the universities. For example, UPenn has a laboratory that has been sharing results. We also have our Indiana Animal Disease Diagnostics Laboratory that also has been sharing results, just to figure out, because we need a coordinated effort, since this is, there are so many states involved too, to be able to get to the bottom of this.
All right, next question's from WITZ News. You need to unmute.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. I just wanted to ask about the actual scope, like how many birds have been estimated to have been found with this condition, and then if you have the total number of confirmed.
So our total number of confirmed are 285 birds so far. When it comes to estimates, we are likely, when it comes to the confirmed reports, that is likely an underestimate of what's actually going on. So I would say in the hundreds would be the number of birds that are actually affected. That includes, if you also include, for example, birds that are submitted to wildlife rehabilitators, birds that are taken off the landscape through predators, through scavengers. Those are the birds that we can't actually find. So I would say it's definitely more in the hundreds, perhaps like 1,000.
Tanner Holbrook. Says, so Tanner's saying he can't unmute.
Okay. Well, I'll read this one. The question is this condition something that is found to have been exclusive to Indiana, or has it been detected in other bordering states like Illinois, Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan, etc.? So far, we know that it is in Kentucky and Ohio. I'm not too sure about Michigan yet, and we haven't had any reports of it in Illinois either. That's pretty much the extent of my knowledge, is that it's in Kentucky and Ohio.
Lori, you had another question?
Yeah, my question was just kind of what does the distribution look like for bird deaths across Indiana? Like, are there certain counties where you're seeing a high concentration of them?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say the overall distribution of the bird disease is pretty much statewide. It's throughout all of Indiana. But the higher concentrations are occurring in Monroe County, Marion County, and around the Clark County area near the Louisville, near the border of Kentucky. And then we're also seeing some more in Allen County, Kosciuszko. I hope I didn't butcher that. Kosciuszko, and Hamilton.
I just wanted to ask one more too. Have you ever seen, or I don't know if the agency or yourself have seen something like this happen before, where birds have died in mass around the state like this? Has that happened in Indiana before?
So far, I'd say no. Okay, let me think about that a little bit more. Songbirds have not. I think that's the best answer to that. I have not seen songbirds specifically die at such large numbers before. There have been, before my time, I've been working here for 5 years, there was West Nile virus that occurred, I think in the late 90s, 1999 or so. And that hit the eastern US, caused a lot of specific birds to die, mainly corvids, which are crows and jays. But to the extent that, of my knowledge, I do not know of so many songbirds, a large variety of songbirds dying.
All right, Isaac? If you unmute.
Yeah, so my question is about the samples. How exactly are those collected? If you could, I guess, give a summary of the process, how does that process work?
Yes. So what we typically do when we hear about a bird death is that we usually hear about it first through the reporting tool. So people are sending us photos and or videos, or just a very good description of the symptoms. And then we look at the specific type of bird that's being affected to determine whether it needs to be collected in the first place. Because currently the laboratories are pretty, I would say, saturated with the more common species that are being affected, which are the common grackles, blue jays, European starlings, and American robins. And then once we've determined that this is definitely a sample we want to collect, we immediately contact them, the reporter, and tell them to freeze down their specimen. So to first get the sample, wear gloves, of course, double bag it, freeze it down, and then we'll coordinate with our biologists to retrieve that sample to then send it to our laboratories, which is typically the Indiana Animal Disease Diagnostics Laboratory.
Tom Cooney? You need to unmute your own microphone, Tom. Sorry.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
No? Okay. Yeah, the Indiana Bluebird Society does weekly monitoring of bluebird boxes. That does require removing birds that are dead for one reason or another, or picking up birds to check eggs. What's your recommendation for that program?
Always protect yourself. Always wear gloves. And if in general, when you are dealing with any dead animal, protect yourself just in case. So that also refers to birds. And if you don't have disposable gloves, use a plastic bag and invert it so that you don't have to touch it. And then dispose of it. I check it for symptoms just in case. We haven't seen it in bluebirds so far, but just in case there is any instance, just look at the eyes, see whether they're gooey, see whether they're crusted over. And then if they're not, you don't have to report it to us. You can just dispose of it in the household trash.
Thank you.
Michelle Kaufman.
Hi, Allison. Great to
Hi.
see you again.
Good to see you.
So my question is kind of a two-part, but is there any concern with the ecosystem in general, but specifically, especially with the warm weather pets, if pets would possibly eat one of these infected birds or get close to it? Do you have any advice for pet owners? And then the second question is kind of the ecosystem, because I know birds are a big part of that. Is there any concerns about the effect on that?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, we are still, again, because we don't know enough about this disease, trying to take the proper precautions. So that means that pets should be kept out of areas where birds have been seen as sick. That means so that they don't end up eating them. And it's really important also just for, it's mainly for biosecurity measures. Keep them away, don't let them eat them, don't even let them go in the area. I think that's best because they do move around. Now, regarding the ecosystem, I would say that, again, we don't know enough. The numbers aren't quite at that point where we can really determine if it's going to have a major effect on the ecosystem. And the main reason why is because birds naturally experience a lot of disease. They experience parasites from roundworm, whipworm, hookworm, all kinds of things that normally occur in wild birds, to different types of bacteria like salmonella. There's the house finch conjunctivitis, which is the house finch eye disease. That normally occurs in their populations. So those, of course, are a threat to their populations, but they naturally ebb and flow with those populations. But since we don't know enough about this disease, we can't really come to that conclusion yet, whether this is something that is adding and really causing a decline in the populations or not.
Thank you.
All right, if anyone has additional questions, please use the raise your hand or just let me know in the chat. Otherwise, we'll go to Laura.
Yeah, so my question is just, is there any sort of tracking that's available to the public, like some sort of database or map that people can follow the songbird deaths?
Unfortunately, no, we don't have one yet. So far, we've mainly been just tracking it internally and then updating those reports either through news releases or through our online landing page for songbird deaths. And that also gives you the list of counties plus our updated recommendations. So just follow those for now. And I'd say just continue following that just in case there is one, if we do decide to have one.
Alan Carter.
I just want a clarification. The 285 figure that you gave, that is specific to Indiana, correct?
That's correct. Those are specifically reports from the public or from our wildlife rehabilitators in Indiana.
And does that also include sickness or just deaths?
Both. Those are both.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Isaac.
Yeah, coming back for the Cordon Democrat again. I'm curious, do you have any inclination of this could be human caused, or is it too early to say something like that?
Yeah, I think it's too early to say something like that because, again, we don't know enough about the disease to come to that conclusion.
And then what do you think the chances of that would be, like a widespread disease like that? How often would humans be at fault for that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I can't give you a definitive answer on that.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any hands or any further questions. So, Laura again.
Is there a specific songbird species that you're most concerned about that's like already maybe in a vulnerable position?
I'd say so far, no. We don't have any state listed species. So my role specifically is to help conserve species that are declining so species that are endangered or of special concern. And I have about 50 of them, give or take. And when I look through that list, none of them have been affected. None of them so far. We've never seen any of those symptoms in those birds. So I would say no. And again, those are mainly affecting the more common species.
All right, anyone else? All right, well, thank you, Allison, for your time today. And again, thank you, journalists, for joining us in this meeting. I apologize for the technical difficulties we experienced early. From all of us at Indiana Department of Natural Resources, we hope you have a safe and happy 4th of July. And thanks again for joining us on this conference.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.